Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Meta Design. See, in the last video, we just learned how to put a few things together, right? A shoe, some text. But in general, there are two main use cases of Photoshop. The first one is compositing, where you can take multiple different images and put them together, unrelated images. So you could put maybe a man living inside a glass bottle or, somebody underwater. You can do some really cool fantasy stuff. And the second thing you can do with Photoshop is you can use it as an illustration tool. You can make flat designs, you can make icons, you can make characters, you can draw them all out and give them their own colors. And while the people who do the illustration bit do it on Adobe Illustrator after a while, right? And especially after they get a little better at Photoshop, they say they make a choice, right? Do I move into fantasy compositing stuff and work in Hollywood, or should I do the pen tool and work in Silicon Valley, right? So it's either you go into the tech businesses creating amazing illustrations, or you go and create amazing compositing pieces. Here in this episode, we're actually going to learn compositing. We're going to learn how it works, and we're going to learn how to put seemingly unrelated things together in the tool that is Photoshop. So let's do it. All right. So I use this free tool called Unsplash. I think I mentioned it before, where I can find some cool stuff. I just look for mountain road. All of these are free images that you can use, royalty free. So I'm going to copy this image. I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to create a new document. That's file new. Let's just keep the default size, and I'm going to paste. And as you can see, this looks like a beautiful, Irish or Swiss Alp kind of thing. It looks nice, but we are going to mess around with it a little bit. First, let's create some separation between the foreground and the background, right? This all looks like one image. Let's see. Let's go into our pen tool. Let's keep it on path mode, and let's create some quick separation. Let's see. Because we're going to put something special in between, but we need to create some separation first. That's where the road ends. This entire thing looks absolutely marvelous. I wish I could go there sometime. Unfortunately or fortunately, the Meta platform has not allowed me to run around. We've been shooting content, day in and day out. Had zero time to do any of this. But one day, my friend, one day. All right, let's put all this together. This should be good enough. Almost done, and we're done. So I'm just going to select the bottoms, try to close the curve. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to make a selection instead of creating a vector mask, and I'm going to press copy, and I'm going to press paste. So we have this thing that we can move around with. Unlike my usual scenes, I'm not using a layer mask because I want to show you how the selection route works. It's almost the same thing. It has very little flexibility, though. I can't change things around later. But here you go. So you have this separation between the foreground and the background. Let's just align it up nicely. I'm going to change the opacity. Let's see. It's got to look perfect. Okay, that's just good enough. Awesome. So I'm going to hide this for now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google, and I'm going to look for a dragon. That's what I'm going to do. Let's see. Let's size large. See if I can find something from Game of Thrones. Whoa. All right, so let's copy this image, paste. And as you can see, we have a nice little dragon. Let's hide it behind, our separation. Now you can see why we did this. And as you can see, the dragon is watching closely. Let me just So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut out this dragon very quickly. So you put this on top, bring this down. Let me just cut him out, him or her out, I don't know. So let's see, let's just pick out the dragon from his or her background. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm holding the shift key while I'm doing this. I'm using the background selection tool. You know, it's too much effort for me to go in and manually cut the dragon out. That's not the best use of my time here. We don't need the woman for now. Let's make this really small so we can get the edges. It's on negative selection mode, and whenever it turns to plus, it's because I'm holding down the shift key. Okay, so this looks okay. Like I said, it doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to do some interesting stuff. Okay, so I'm going to Control C and Control V, or rather, I'm just going to hit the layer mask. I'm going to move this entire layer down, and as you can see, this is why it didn't have to be perfect, because I'm just going to edit, transform, flip horizontal. No, I'm not going to do that. All right, this looks good. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to hide our imperfections a little later. But as you can see, we have a nice little dragon who's a little bit angry. Looks a little bit angry. Okay, so now we're going to make sure that the dragon blends in well. So let's just make sure he's in the right place. He or she is in the right place. And let's go get some clouds, right? So I went to Google and I looked for some clouds. I'm going to download this. Let's look for clouds PNG. You'll find some transparent images and bring it into Photoshop. You know, we'll just make this a little bigger. And as you can see, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create some, you know, replicate a little bit of the clouds that were at the back in the front of this image, right? So a little bit of clouds. I'm just going to erase a little bit. Click on the eraser, you know, drop the opacity a little bit, increase the flow a little bit, soft brush, and must I rasterize the type first, so it's rasterized. Just gonna erase a little bit so that we have some nice clouds. That's just a little bit. Right, so we have these clouds here. I'm gonna duplicate them again. Right click, duplicate layer. Let's put it on top of the wings because we didn't cut out the wings well. Let's duplicate the wings. Let's duplicate this again. Right click, duplicate. You know, let's make that. So we've just taken that the wings out of the equation now because we've put so many clouds there. Right click again, duplicate. You know, let's do the same thing on the left side. Maybe, you know, transform it, right click, flip horizontal just to make the clouds look a little different. You know, move it up a little bit, duplicate it again. You know, we're just now playing with clouds, right? That's the point. I don't want it covering the dragon's eyes, so I'm just going to erase from the clouds. Just going to make sure it's a little bit well done. Maybe move this thing. Yeah, this is good enough. As you can see, it looks like the dragon is emerging from the clouds. Let's get another set of clouds in, last set of clouds in, just to put it here. This time let's reduce the opacity so it looks like it's just a little bit of smog. And now we're starting to see that the scene is starting to take shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a brave man into this. So I'm just going to say man from behind. Right, so let's see if we can get, let's have this guy here, the hoodie. Right click, copy, go back to Photoshop, paste. All right, let's cut this dude out. We're going to use the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. We need to be perfect with this because we can't have clouds all over this man. You know, clicking the Alt key breaks the curve. You guys know how to do that. Just gonna keep on keeping on. We're gonna have this man be, or this boy be unafraid of the dragon. Right, so we're just selecting out the kid. Just putting it together. And I'm just almost done with this gentleman's hair. Right, so almost there. Pull this gentleman's ear out. Alright, this looks sort of good enough. This is good enough for us to actually right click, create vector mask, and we've pulled this boy out of the location. I'm just going to make him a little smaller. Right. Now, as you can see, he looks a little bit out of the scene, right? He looks a little bit kind of, it's like the colors don't go with the rest of the scene. So, and you probably figured out the key to compositing, which is to try and get all the colors to match. So if there's a light source on the right, then you need all the shadows on the left, right? And you need that for all the images. And at the same time, you need the saturations. Like if something is too bright, then everything needs to be that bright. If something is dull, then everything needs to be dull. The colors need to match. So there's a lot to do with compositing, which is trying to get everything on the same page. So we have this boy here. We're just going to keep him here. And I think that, now zoom out a little bit. Before we start working on the boy, let's start working on the color composition of the entire scene. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image, the image in front, and I'm going to blur out a little bit. So I'm going to click on the blur tool, right? I'm going to make this bigger with a big brush. I'm just going to blur out the edges, right? The edges of the scene. It's like the fog is kind of taking over and making it difficult to see. Right? Anything that's too far away is being blurred into oblivion. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the colors of the dragon match the colors of the planes. So let's go to the planes. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a group here. So that's Control plus G, and it automatically goes inside the group. It's just this one layer, this thing. And what I'm going to do is inside the group, I'm going to, just above this layer, I'm going to create a curves adjustment layer. And the reason I made a group is because when you have a group, you can actually use the clipping, and it doesn't affect all the layers below it. It affects just the layers in the group, and that's why you make groups, right? Adjustment layers affect everything below them, except when they're in a group where they affect only the things below them in the group itself. So that's why I created the group. I clipped it to the layers below. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change these a little bit. As you can see, I can make it brighter, or I can make it a little bit darker. And what I choose to do is make it slightly darker, just slightly darker. Bring the curves a little bit lower, just a little bit, and just to create a little bit of atmosphere. And then I think, it's too bright. The dragon is dull, but the planes look bright. So I'm going to make them a little duller too. So I'm going to click on this layer, click on this, and I am going to dull it out by clicking on the hue and saturation, right? With the hue and saturation, I'm going to drop the saturation a little bit. I'm going to make the planes a little darker, right? Just not a little darker, but I'm going to drain the color out of it. So just draining the color a little bit, right? And then what I'm going to do is I am going to click on this again, and I'm going to give it a photo filter. As you can see, the dragon is bluish, right? So I want to give it a slight blue tinge. So what I do is click on this, click on adjustment layer again, and give it a photo filter, right? And the photo filter, I'm going to choose a blue filter. Yeah, there's a blue filter there. Just gonna we can overdo it with that. I think we'll use a cooling filter. That's a little bit better. Just a little bit, not too much. Actually, let's play with the other filters. Yeah, I think this is a little better. I think the warming filter looks a little better. Let's see what the yellow looks like. I always look at what yellow looks like and then decide. Okay, so warming filter. Awesome. So just a little bit. That looks good. I'm going to clip this to the layer below. Okay, so everything's in the group. All's good. And we're also going to add the same photo filter to the dragon itself. Let's add a photo filter. Let's clip it to what's below. Let's see if we can create a little bit of brownness in the dragon. Awesome. So now that we're done with that, let's work on the boy, right? Let's first give him a group. That's Control+G, or you can just click this button, create a group. But when you don't press Control+G, you have to put this manually inside the group, which is kind of a drag and drop thing. So I put the boy in. And as you can see, he has some lights on the left and some shadows on the right. It's like the light is coming in from here. Whereas in this image, there doesn't seem to be a clear light source, but if we had to pick, it's coming from the right. Right? So either we can flip him around, which I think we will do. That's Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Right? So we're just going to flip him around. And then what we're going to do is we're going to slowly, make sure that it's not as bright as it's supposed to be. And the way to do it is to click on the dodge tool and the burn tool. The dodge tool lightens areas, the burn tool darkens areas. So I'm going to choose the burn tool, choose a smaller size, and just burn him a little bit on the right so that it's not as dark as it's supposed to be. Or rather, it's not as dark as we first got the image. Just have a little bit of this. Right, so we have this boy here. He's still staring at the dragon. Now we need to make sure that we change his colors so that he's able to play a little bit with the dragon. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on color balance, right? And we have the different sticks to play with. We're going to make sure it affects only the layers in the group below. And we're going to just a little bit going to play with his colors. Right? Just going to make this boy a little smaller actually. He's a little bit too big for the image. Right. Burn him a little more. Right. It's too much. Right, so let's play a little bit with the color balance. And on top of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to desaturate him. So let's just add a desaturation with the hue saturation. Remove a lot of the colors, some of the colors. Remove a little bit of the lightness. Right, go back to the color balance. Let's move him up just a little bit so he looks real. A lot of greens in the image, so we're going to play with that. Right, so we have that. And this is all a lot of trial and error. As you can see, we're trying to get the best match between this person and that image, the image of the dragon and the planes. And now, once you have, sort of a decent match, the brightnesses and the curves, they're kind of matching together. We'll try to normalize the entire thing. And I'll show you what that means. But before that, let's make sure the dragon casts a little bit of a shadow. So we have this dragon layer. We have this group. I'm just going to create a new layer. Right? I'm going to take a brush, right? Make a big brush. Just take black and let's paint, right? Maybe the dragon's casting a shadow and the dragon's, huge, so it's casting a huge shadow, right? And what we'll do is we'll go to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. Right? The dragon's casting a little bit of a shadow on everything. And what we're going to do is we're just going to drop the opacity to like a little bit, so that the shadow shows. Right? And then, maybe it doesn't cast the shadow that far. Let's take the eraser. Let's increase the flow. Let's increase the opacity. Let's increase the size. And let's get rid of the shadows here. That's not necessary. It's a little excessive. Maybe. Yeah, maybe just a little bit of imposition on screen. Let's move that a little bit. Yeah. So we have all of this, and now what we're going to do is we are going to go to the adjustments, and we're going to add something called a gradient map. Like I mentioned before, gradient maps are like Instagram filters, right? They homogenize the entire scene. So I'm going to click on gradient map. I'm going to choose a different gradient. Let's say this one or this one. Let's choose this one, and I'm going to drop the opacity just a little bit, so the scene looks homogeneous, right? And homogeneous means everything looks similar, right? I'm going to go back to the boy. I'm actually not fully happy with, where is the boy? He's in group 2. I'm not fully happy with this yellow tinge on the man, so I'm going to see if I can get rid of that. The yellow, it doesn't look right. 1 second. Undo. Draining the saturation to a certain extent, dropping the lightness. Should do. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm just going to change the hue a little bit so that his hair becomes greenish or bluish rather, a little more. Okay, that looks good. Awesome. So as you can see, we've kind of created this composition with all of these things, and you can play with the gradient map. You can play with the amount of filter on the gradient map. So I can, for example, choose a different gradient map and it looks different, or I can choose one of these and drop the opacity even further, right? And it starts looking good. This is to homogenize the entire image. I think we'll go with something like this. Drop the opacity even more. Actually, no, we'll go back to our original one, which was, yes, this one. Let's drag the opacity up. And as you can see, we've made a pretty cool composition of a dragon staring at a man, and that's it. That's compositing. It's a lot of trial and error. It's putting a lot of things in the right places, blending it out, using erasers, using brushes, creating shadows where there are no shadows, making sure all the lights are similar, like for all the images, the colors are balanced out. Because at the end of the day, in a scene, a hypothetical scene, there are many elements, and if there is a light source, all of these elements should cast shadows in the same direction. That's what the option for global light is in Photoshop. At the same time, all of their colors need to be balanced. You can't have one thing that's exhibiting a lot of reds, but there are no other reds in the scene, right? So the colors need to be balanced. The saturation, the lightness, and the curves need to be balanced. But if you get all of those right, then you're in a place where you're able to create some fantastic stuff. So that's it for this episode. Let me just save this image. And catch you in the next one.